Welcome dear students to another class of English. Today we'll start the third lesson of Ishwaran the Storyteller from our moments. So we have earlier seen the lesson, the story of the adventures of Toto. So today we'll start the Ishwaran the Storyteller. The title itself is a storyteller. About we'll know here about it's a storyteller. Huh? Once it tells a story. So, who is the storyteller? The Ishwaran, and the who is the hero? We will see the in the lesson itself. One night, Mahendra woke up from a sleep and saw a dark, cloudy form. He broke out into cold sweat. Was it a ghost? So it's like in a horror story, a story when you will feel fright. So what the fright is about, we will see in the lesson. Here, if I give you the basics of this lesson, then you will see that Ishwaran is a storyteller, and this storyteller, he every day tells a story to Mahendra, and Mahendra is on a construction site. So on this construction site, you can see that there are open space, and there is open space, and sometimes a construction site has is a place where it's very deserted, or it can the land is a place where the dead bodies are buried, or that type of situation. And this is one of that situation that occurs over here. And here Ishwaran tells another story wherein he connects this story. The writer connects the story of Ishwaran with this situation, and then how the position occurs where he has to give up this job and go away, Mahendra. It's a very interesting story that way. But those who are thinking of ghosts and ghost stories, they will also like it. This story. The story was narrated by to Ganesh by young men. So who is the narrator? You should know. Ganesh by a young man. Ganesh को बताया गया था एक young man द्वारा. Mahendra by the name, he was a junior supervisor in the firm which offered to on hire supervisors at various types of construction sites. Factories, bridges, dams, and so on. So the owner of this construction sites would appoint supervisor, and this construction can be of different types, like factories, bridges, dams, and so on. Mahendra's job was to keep an eye on the activities at the work site. He had to keep moving from place to place every now and then as ordered by his head office, from a coal mining area to railway bridge construction site, from there a few months to a chemical plant which was coming up somewhere. So up till now he has moved to these places like office and the coal mines and railway bridge. Now at present he is at the chemical plant which is coming up, and that construction of the chemical plant which will be done, and Mahendra will be the supervisor in that particular site to see things are happening properly in the construction work. He was a bachelor, not married. His needs were simple, and he was able to adjust himself to all kinds of odd conditions. Only alone, so he can adjust to odd conditions. Whether he was an ill-equipped circuit house or a makeshift canvas tent in the middle of a stone quarry. So whether it's a stone quarry, or he had to sleep on the stone quarry on the canvas, or he was ill-equipped circuit house where the house is there for on rent you can get, and that house circuit house it's called. It's also ill-equipped, not having all the facilities. That also he would adjust. The cook was quite attached to Mahendra and followed him uncomplainingly wherever he was posted. He cooked for Mahendra, washed his clothes, and chatted away with his master at night. He would weave out endless stories and anecdotes on the various subjects. So here, our storyteller Ishwaran is a cook who is a helper in all the household activities of daily routine, which is done by this cook, and he Ishwaran is the helper of Mahendra. And whole day his master at night he would sit with the master and do the this his art of telling stories to him and talk about things happened during the day when in his absence or like that. So he used to talk with his what you call it master at night, because whole day Mahendra was in the on the site and he had to observe people, and therefore he could not also doing the supervisor work, he could not stay more at the house. At night was the only place that or time during which they used to interact. So at that time he would tell stories. Who? Ishwaran to Mahendra. Ishwaran also had an amazing capacity to produce vegetables and cooking ingredients seemingly out of nowhere in the middle of the desolate landscape with no shops visible for miles around. So nice food with vegetables, growing by himself, in the space that was available at the site and all that he used to do, no share. The desolate land space. Desolate means where not people are more there. It's a place that is not inhabited more. The landscape was, not having a clean look, and therefore this he would miraculously conjure up the most delicious, miraculously, say miracle, from that the word, that is adverb, miraculously conjure means jadoo, he makes he produces, and then he the most delicious dishes with fresh vegetables within an hour of arriving at the zinc sheet shelter at the new workplace. So where the temporary tent was there, he used to, within 1 hour, he used to prepare food and serve to Mahendra. Mahendra would be up early in the morning and leave for work after breakfast, carrying some prepared food with him. Some food very needed at the site of supervision. He used to take food from there to there from the tent. Meanwhile, Ishwaran would tidy up the bed. So in between the time the master was away and he was alone in the house, what were the daily chores that was done by Ishwaran is mentioned here in the story. So what he did, he tidy up the shed, wash the clothes, and have a leisurely bath. So bathing used to have leisurely. Why? Because no one was there to observe him or look at him and to take care of what he does. So pouring several buckets of water over his head, muttering a prayer all the while. You must have seen elderly people, praying and while taking bath, remembering various rivers and or nadi, we call it the river goddesses and all that. Ganga Maya, that and all that. They speak at the time of nothing. They wash the clothes and have a leisurely bath, pouring several buckets, muttering prayer. So it would be lunchtime by then. So by this time the activities was done, it was what? Lunchtime. After eating, he would read for a while before dozing off. The book was usually some popular Tamil thriller running to hundreds of pages. Huh? Thriller means it thrills you, excites you to know what is in it. The type of hundreds of pages book in Tamil, popular Tamil literature. He would read these books. Its imaginative description and narrative flourishes would hold Ishwaran in thrall. So he used to totally get into that literature when this thriller was read by him. So that way you can say that Ishwaran was a great reader and of this thriller, and when you are totally absorbed in that reading, then you are called you hold Ishwaran in thrall. The book takes your mind totally, you're captivated by that. His own description would greatly influenced by Tamil authors that he read. So those people, while having a reading a bit, they take some clues and can tell stories from this type of books where the thriller is there. So here, his book was these books which he read was inspiring him to tell stories wherein the author's views were present as the author's views were presented in the books. He would try to work in suspense and surprise ending into the count. For example, instead of saying that he had come across an uprooted tree on the highway, he would say, these are things you'll have to write in the answer. Wherein he's in the highway, he saw some uprooted trees on the highway. What he would say, with the eyebrows suitably arched and hands held out in a dramatic gesture, like this, making hands and all gestures he made of things happening. Uprooted the highway. The road was deserted and I was all alone. Suddenly I spotted something that looked like an enormous bushy beast. A tree that has fallen bushy and beast. It's beast compared to the wild animal. Lying sprawled across. Sprawl means spreading arms and legs and all the sprawling. That type of beast. I was half inclined to turn and go back. But as I came closer, I saw that it was a fallen tree with its dry branches spread out. He clarifies that, what this tree was. It was, looking far away from the distance away from this tree, fallen tree, I felt it was, some beast fallen, or, it was looking dangerous. But when I saw coming near, I observed that it was a tree and it was fallen tree and that nothing more. So Mahendra would just stretch himself back in his canvas chair and listen to Ishwaran's tales uncritically. Uncritically means without the thing, criticizing him. That why you're saying so this and that like that. Nothing. He used to just listen, because the whole day he was tired and listening to the stories and getting into that, world. Because entertaining is necessary for a man, and if after a whole day's work that entertaining is in the form of television, or here we have these days, the mobile or that. In those days it was not, and this type of storytelling was the art of people, and this art was very mastered by some people like this Ishwaran, and he was telling the story, and he was visualize and relax on his canvas chair and feel happy. This was the situation that happened. The place I come from, a famous for timber, Ishwaran would begin. There is a richly wooden forest all around. The logs are hauled up to the lorries by elephants. The elephants are filling up the wood that is collected from the forest. They are huge, well-fed beasts. When they turn wild, even the most experienced mount is not able to control them. Wild elephants is talking about that. After the prologue, Ishwaran would launch into the elaborate anecdote involving an elephant. The prologue means the short summary of something, before you speak out, or you have to, Ishwaran wants to speak about something. Before that, he will give some summary of it. That's called the prologue. So the prologue was given. After that, the elaborate anecdote, elaborate story, big story was narrated thereafter. So the Tusker story is, you have to write about it, the story. One day a tusker, that is elephant, escaped from the timber yard and began to roam about, stamping on bushes, tearing up wild creepers and spreading branches at will. So he was mad, and having this type of wildness that the elephant shows. You must have seen films or documentaries where a wild elephant can create havoc. Sir, how an elephant behaves when he goes mad. Ishwaran would get so caught up in the excitement of his own story that he would get up from the floor and jump about, stamping his feet in emulation of a mad elephant. So you used to get into the story, and this stamping that elephant would do, he would do and show that type of thing was the art that was in the storytelling art, what we can say, which Ishwaran did with all his gesticulations and movement of arms and legs and thumping it or whatever what was in the story. He used to do very nice action way he used to explain the story. He would continue. He came into the main road and smashed all the stalls selling. It's what the mad elephant does, selling stalls and selling fruits, mud pots, matka and also होता है ना. Then clothes, stalls of this, which were there, all things is smashing. People were helter-skelter in panic, here and there, without any control, chaos totally, and the people are running here and there in panic means घबराहट की वजह से, out of fear or fright. The elephant now entered the school ground where the children were breaking through the brick wall. This game that we were playing, breaking through the brick wall. All the boys ran to the classroom and shut the doors tight. The beast grunted and wandered about, the pulling out of the football goal post. No? They're playing the game. The tearing about down the volleyball net. So all these things, goal posts which are there of iron, he puts them down. Then the volleyball net is that he destroys that, tearing out and kicking and flattening the drum kept for water. Drum kept for water, kicking. Drum means ना पीप जो होता है जिसमें बहुत बड़ा पानी भरते हैं ना, बड़ा टंका, under the tap, that he smashes with his leg and pushes it. The water falls, water gets down, trickles down from that, or it's totally getting on the road. Meanwhile, all the teachers had climbed up the terrace of the school building from where they helplessly watched the depredations of the elephant. ये जो havoc मचा रहा था, this who, the elephant. The teachers went on the terrace of the school. They didn't stay down. There were not a soul below on the ground. Soul below. Not a soul was there, Saul was there for this on the ground to stay and face this mad elephant. The streets were empty as inhabitants of the entire town and suddenly disappeared. Streets were empty as if the whole town has disappeared. Nothing. All people got into the safe place because of this mad elephant's activity. I was studying in the junior class at that time and I was watching the whole drama from the rooftop. I don't know what came over me suddenly. I grabbed a cane from the hands of one of the teachers and ran down the stairs and into the open. An elephant grunted and menacing swung a branch of a tree which he held in the trunk. Menacingly means very dangerously. This as Ishwaran, when he says it, when I was small, I and this act was happening of the elephant. I went in front of that, taking the cane of the teacher, but the elephant menacingly means dangerously took a branch of a tree in its trunk and threw grunted and menacingly swung a branch of a tree which it held in its trunk. Menacing, dangerously, like beating. It stamped its feet, kicking up a lot of mud and dust. It looked frightening, but I moved slowly towards it, stick in hand. See, Ishwaran, how he exaggerates things. People were watching the scene, hypnotized from nearby housetops. All people got into the house on the top and they were watching what this boy is doing. The elephant looked at me, red-eyed, ready to rush towards me. It lifted its trunk and trumpeted loudly. Who is this child in front of me? The elephant thought, and he with a red eye. You can see the eye of a elephant that is red. So here are all things which are creating exaggeration in the story is very nicely narrated over by Ishwaran. That's the art of storytelling. It generates a sense of this action which is not you see in the normal life. I moved forward and gathering all my force. Then whacked its third toenail on the quick. तीसरा नाखून जो था ना of the elephant, on that I struck. The beast looked stunned for a moment, and then it shivered from the head to foot and collapsed. Such a dangerous elephant, he had gone mad, and with this, touch of the third toe, he wagged, means he beat, and the elephant is collapsing and getting on the ground. This is the story that is very, comical at the end. In this point, Ishwaran would leave this story unfinished and get up mumbling, "I will be back with lighting the gas and warming up the dinner. I will warm up the dinner. You have to eat also, no, sir? So we will." So Mahendra, who had been listening with the rapt attention, would be left hanging. Then he returned. Ishwaran would not pick up a thread of the story right away. So when he came back with that hot dinner for themselves to eat, or for his master, he did not pick up from the thing, where he stopped. The story stops from that, he had to pick up, but he didn't do that. Mahendra would have to remind him that the conclusion was pending. Mahendra याद दिलाता है कि ना एंड तो बताया नहीं तू. Well, a veterinary doctor was summoned to revive the animal. Ishwaran was struck casually. 2 days later, it was led away by its mahout to the jungle. वेटरनरी डॉक्टर को बुलाया गया, उसको अच्छा किया गया, एंड बाद में एक माहौत ने उसको जंगल में ले गया वो. वेल, हाउ डिड यू मैनेज टू डू इट ईश्वरन? हाउ डिड यू ब्रिंग डाउन द बीस्ट? कैसे नाखून पे इतना झटका जद से मारा तू, और वो नीचे गिर गया, इतना पागल एलिफेंट. It was something to do with the Japanese art, I think, like karate or jujitsu, it is called. Japanese art. I had read about it somewhere. It temporarily paralyzes the nervous system, you see. So here he says that the art of a Japanese, if you use this art, then what happens? Temporarily, that paralysis would take control of that nervous system, and that because of the paralysis, that person or that beast cannot stand and it will collapse. But that was the thing that happened with this elephant, and that was the art which I knew at that age when I was small. But further we can see over here that he is this type of storytelling is a great entertainer for himself, as well as he entertains his master. But not a day passed without Ishwaran recounting some story packed with adventure, horror, and suspense. Adventure, wherein life and death is there. Horror, Dharavna, and suspense, what will happen. All these type of stories, whenever the story was credible or not. Story was credible. Credible means समझ में आए कि सही है, ऐसा है या नहीं, वो बोल देता था स्टोरी. और स्टोरी ऑलवेज इज नॉट ट्रू. इट्स लेजेंडरी स्टोरीज, type of stories which is not real, we can feel, or mythical stories are there which we think that it is not true, yet we understand or learn it, or you get enjoyment or entertainment from that. Okay, that thing was there in the story that Ishwaran told. Mahendra enjoyed listening to it because of the inimitable way in which it was told. Inimitable means without copying. He was naturally getting into the character what he was explaining, and therefore he was something that to be heard, and therefore Mahendra never objected, or Mahendra never said what absurd your story is, or like that. Nothing. He used to enjoy. Ishwaran seemed to more than make up for the absence of TV in Mahendra's living quarters. So the stories he told was, as I told you, television absent in the temporary tent. You can't have a television because of lack of facilities over there, and therefore this TV is not there. So this absence of TV he makes up means just like a TV serial or a documentary gives you elaborate picture of what happened and what is the story and all that. No, it's you see on the TV. The same way, Ishwaran told the story in such a way that he could visualize it and see as if he was watching a TV. One morning, when Mahendra was having breakfast, Ishwaran asked, "Can I make something special for a dinner tonight, sir? After all, today is an auspicious day. According to tradition, prepare various delicacies to keep the spirits of our ancestors today, sir." So, Shraddh nahi support. We remember our the spirits of our God, of our dead elders and fathers, grandfathers, were great grandfathers. We remember them on that day. So that we remember the spirits of that. They are not physically, but we are thinking that they are around us, and we do the puja or that. So that is there, and during these days, we make special arrangement for this food and all that. So Ishwaran asks Mahendra, "Okay, sir, we need to prepare some good dish because there is these days of Shraddh or that is there. Then therefore we have to make this dishes. So shall we?" That night, Mahendra enjoyed the most delicious dinner and complimented Ishwaran for his culinary skills. Culinary means cooking skills, nice food that you are able to cook. Those are culinary skills. He seemed very pleased, but unexpectedly launched into a most garish account of involving the supernatural. So now he tells about the horror of this spiritual, and garish means, we can say it was something that created horror. Sir, this entire factory area has occupied by once a burial ground. He started. Mahendra was jerked out of the peace of the pleasant reverie he had drifted into after the satisfying meal. So he tells it was a burial ground. Burial ground means it was a ground that was, where people were buried. So smashan is about that. Those are spirit things which involving spirits, and therefore he says that on the ground itself where we are, it was a burial ground. I knew on the very first day when I saw a human skull lying on the. You can see in the picture on the next page. Even now, I come across a number of skulls and bones. Ishwaran continued. The chemical factory which we are making now at this site, there is skulls and bones of dead people, all on the way. He went on to narrate how he sometimes saw ghosts at nights. Ghost also you would see, bhoot. I was also not easily frightened by these things, sir. I am a brave fellow, but one horrible ghost of a woman which appears on the road of midnight during the full moon. It is ugly creature with matted hair and shivered face like skeleton looking poetess in its arms. The ugly woman is also, I'm seeing at this place, it's a horrible ghost of a woman and ghost. एक औरत है जिसने बाल ऐसे नहीं है ना फुल मून के दिन वो आती है नहीं all these things spiritual things. Mahendra shivered at the description, interrupted rather sharply. You are crazy, Ishwaran. पागल है क्या ऐसा कुछ होता है? There are no such things in the ghosts or spirits. भूत और spirits ये सब होता नहीं है. It is all figment of our imagination. एक सोच होती है हमारी कि भूत होता है नहीं. We don't actually have this. It is a figment of your imagination. Get your digestive system examined. And maybe your head as well. You are talking nonsense. ये जो बड़बड़ कर रहा है तू तो डॉक्टर को ये तेरा पेट दिखा या फिर डाइजेस्टिव सिस्टम दिखा और या फिर तेरा दिमाग खराब हो गया तो उसका कुछ इलाज कर. He left the room and retired for the night, expecting Ishwaran to sulk for a couple of days, but the next morning he was surprised to find the cook as cheerful and talkative as ever. So he wanted not to talk all these things, because he gets tense because maybe of this thing. From that day on, Mahendra, for all his brave talk, went to bed with a certain unease. Every night he peered into the darkness outside to the window next to his bed, trying to make sure that there was no movement of dark shapes in the vicinity. नज़दीक में ना बाहरी में से देखता था कि nothing was there ना. From the tent he used to see and ask, make sure that no, so this type of dark shapes काला कोई दिखता नहीं है काला काला. It's a night, dark nights ना. You see ना, the nearby it's not there. वो हर रोज रात को देखता था. But he could not, he could only see a sea of darkness with twinkling stars of the factory line miles away. The lights of these factories, which are miles away, he could see as small dots, and these only twinkling. Nothing except was seen. The darkness was all over. He had always liked to admire the milk white landscape of full moon nights, but after hearing Ishwaran's story of the female ghost, he avoided looking out of his window altogether when the moon was full. Whenever the full moon was there, he never used to peep out of the window, because he knew that that particular day the lady ghost will come and haunt him. So he never used to look out at night on those days. One night Mahendra was woken up from his sleep by a low moan close to his window. Moan means noise. At night, at first he put it down to a cat prowling around for a mice. पहले तो सोचा there will be this prowling of the mice. Mice and cat, when they scrimper very fast, at night, in the silence of the night, you hear it very loudly. But the sound was too guttural for a cat. Guttural means it was so much deep from the throat that this cannot be the sound of the cat. He confirms that he resisted the curiosity to look out, lest he could behold a sight which would stop his heart. But the wailing became louder and less feline. Feline means cat. So that wailing, crying noise, louder it was and less feline. Cat की नहीं हुआ ऐसा आवाज ये सुनाई दे रहा था. He would not resist the temptation anymore. Lowering himself to the level of the window sill, he looked away. Was a dark, cloudy form clutching a bundle. Mahendra broke into the cold sweat and fell back onto the pillow. So this scene, what his noise and voice that was coming, which he heard, that made him feel sick, totally, and cold sweat, and fell back on the pillow. He panting, डरा हुआ सांस लेते हुए. As he gradually recovered from his ghastly experience, he began to reason with himself and finally concluded that he must have been some sort of an auto-suggestion. This term is very important, auto-suggestion. आपकी mind कई बार ऐसा आपको दिखता है कि ऐसा होता है, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं होता है. माइंड में आपके चलता है और आपको रियल फील होता है, या ऑटो सजेशन मिलता है, या फिर आप ऐसा सोच लेते हो कि आपका माइंड आपको सजेस्ट करके ये सिचुएशन में ऐसा होता है. तो ऐसा ऑटो सजेशन होता है. तो दिस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इट हेल्प्स यू टू गेट योरसेल्फ अलर्ट इन टाइम्स ऑफ danger, and all that. Auto suggestions are very helpful to get a way out of problem. Some trick that his subconscious had played on him. Trick of the subconscious means the subconscious mind has played a trick on me, and therefore I feel that I've seen some ghost. By the time he had got up in the morning, had a bath, and come out of his breakfast, the horror of the previous night had faded from his memory. Ishwaran greeted him at the door with his lunch packet and his bag. So in the morning, sometimes you would very dangerous or horrific dream in the night. But in the morning, you are fresh, you have taken bath, you don't take care of all, or don't have any remembrance of it, take any thing into your mind. So here, his bag. Just as Mahendra was stepping out to Ishwaran grinned and said, "Sir, remember the other day when I was telling you about the female ghost with the foetus in his arms? We were so angry and we are not for imagining things." हाँ उस दिन मैंने बताया था ना, the lady with the foot is holding in her hand, and she was, really there as a female ghost. You were laughing on it, me, huh? Well, you saw for yourself last night. मैं देखा ना, तुम आप उठ के देखे थे उसको ना नाइट में, हाँ. I came running, hearing sound of mourning that was coming from that room. वो साउंड आवाज़ मुझे आ रही थी, आप मॉर्निंग मीन्स crying, like, this fearful noise was coming from the room. So this Mahendra, what he says, a chill went down to Mahendra's spine. He did not, chill went down means डर जाना एकदम, वापस वो याद आ गया ना रात का. He did not wait for Ishwaran to complete his sentence. He hurried away for his office and handed his papers, resolving to leave this haunted place the very next day. So at that office, he goes and writes a letter, leave letter, resolving to leave this haunted place. डरावनी जगह से मुझे वो अपना इस्तीफ़ा देके या फिर उसका वहाँ से बदल के जॉब करने का उसने निर्णय ले लिया. एंड दैट वे फ्रॉम द नेक्स्ट डे इटसेल्फ ही नेवर stayed at that place, because see, storyteller can be so effective. So here, an interesting story we have seen, and you must have understood that this properly. And this type of stories are there which helps you to make yourself thrilled by this type of stories which are having a lot of suspense and horror, which gets you into that story. This is one of such stories, and with that you think about it, and that's part of this questions you will have to write in your fair book. Till then, see you in the next class.